forgiveness if this is oh so offensive to you. If by right I offended thee, I gladly pluck it away from me. For it is better to go into heaven blind in an eye than to go into hell with both eyes. Oh me, oh my,
Are you ready?
I took a trip to Washington, D.C., and I really love visiting that area. I often tell my wife, Bettina, that I and our family should take about a month to just stay in Washington during the summer, or at least a couple of weeks, just to take in all of the historical landmarks, all of the various museums, all of the wonderful spaces and opportunities to tour the White House and everything else you can get into. I just love everything about the city. And if I could, I would go at least once every 2 weeks, or maybe even more frequently than that. But on my last trip, I went to a place that I would imagine would be a natural home for me, a place where I can relax and I can just take in all of the wonderful things that we can enjoy in life, and that is reading. I felt like, the Library of Congress is one of the greatest libraries in the country, with some of the most historical and some of the most incredible books. And so in this last trip, I took the opportunity to walk through the Library of Congress, and I did so in just 1 hour. Now, I didn't get to see everything, but I did get to see some incredible things, and also got to see some things that were quite disappointing. So my imagination told me that if I go to the Library of Congress, I would be able to sit down just like you would in any other library and pick up a book off of a shelf and just start reading through it. I mean, after all, it was acclaimed that this is the library that has a copy of every single book that has been published in the United States. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's at least what I thought. And being a self-published author, I thought it would be pretty cool to walk through the library and coincidentally come across a copy of one of the books that I wrote. I really didn't think that I would actually find my book, but I thought there was a possibility there if they actually did have a copy of every single book that was published in the United States, at least within the modern age that we're currently living in. Well, to my surprise, when I got into the building, I discovered that there were no books. I mean, in fact, I walked around for about 30 minutes and had no serious interaction with books. But I did come across something that I did not really expect, and that is the beautiful art that is found in the Library of Congress. It is incredible the way the ceilings are painted, and the flooring and the marble, and just the sleek and clean look that building has. It's incredible, and it's a place that you could definitely spend an entire day just musing and walking around and admiring just the pure luxury of that building, except for the fact that they now have 1 hour limits. So you can't actually spend the entire day, but you can spend a full hour enjoying various aspects of that building without seeing a single book. The library was actually founded in 1800. It was burned down in 1814. In 1815, Congress approved the purchase of Thomas Jefferson's personal library, which included 6,487 books. To this date, these are the numbers that they actually published on their website regarding the number of products and actual material that they have in this library. They have more than 25.49 million catalog books. Surely my book isn't one of those. They have 15.87 million items in the non-classified print collections, which would include large type, raised characters, monographs, music, bound newspapers, pamphlets, technical reports, and other types of printed material. They also have 134.4 million items in the non-classified section, which would include 4.2 million audio materials that vary from discs, tapes, talking books, and all other recorded formats. They have 77 million manuscripts, 5.8 million maps, 17.5 million microforms, 1.8 million moving images, 8.2 million items of sheet music, 15.2 million photographs, 864,000 posters, prints, and drawings, and 2 million other items, including machine-readable items. That is a library. It reminds me of the library that was spoken of in Alexandria, a library that was impressive enough to have people from all over the world to come and visit and just peruse and look at the things that are there and read the material. It was the sort of library that inspired the Greek thinking from the likes of like Aristotle and some of the other pioneers of Greek philosophy. It actually was the means by which Greek culture became fascinated with thinking. With a library of this sort, surely it would be a natural experience, a natural thing for me to go and visit just to look at all the books. However, when I got there, I discovered that you can't actually go and look at the books. You must have a special permission that is granted to you by application to go into that special chamber, that grand and that beautiful space where you can sit at those sacred desks and actually read off of the shelves and see the things that have been written by some of the greatest minds this country and this world has ever produced. So I was a little disappointed that I could not actually go and read and actually study, but it was a great experience. What was more fascinating is seeing all the hundreds of people that were coming into that building, walking around, trying to look at all of the monuments, looking at and admiring that building. And something stood out while I was there. It demonstrated to me just how important history is to individuals. You see, we all elect to believe that things that are written down are historically accurate and they're historically reliable. No one in there was questioning the relevance and the historical reliability of the fact that there were several wars in the United States, or that the Library of Congress had actually been there since 1800. No one was arguing the fact that George Washington was actually the president of the United States. And no one was arguing the fact that the Library of Congress purchased the collection of Thomas Jefferson. It is because there were certain things done to establish the historical reliability of these events in time. Now, when we think about the Bible, the same thing happened with the stories of the Bible, because God knew that there is an innate desire to depend on things that are historically verified through the handing down of written documents. So when you talk about Jesus Christ and whether he was a historical figure or whether he did certain things that will give us a reason to believe, you find in Scripture that these things were written down so we can have a good reason to believe, so that in our faith we won't be dependent on some sort of personal or subjective experience that will be the means or the basis for why we put our faith in Jesus Christ. In fact, that was the intention of the apostles. When the apostle John wrote his letter to the saints, he wrote in two separate places that he wrote these things down so they would have a reason to believe. In fact, he stated that if he was to document all of the things that Jesus did in his life, he supposed that there would not be enough books in the world to contain them. For instance, in John chapter 20, verse 30, he writes, "The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name." He continued in John chapter 21, verse 25. "Jesus also did many other things. If they were all written down, I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that would be written." So let's put this in perspective. If we were to write down every single thing that Jesus did in his 33 short-lived years on earth, not even the Library of Congress would be able to hold all of the books that will contain his activity. This is how spectacular Jesus was. But how would we know these things, and why would we have a good reason to believe unless we have proof that these things actually did happen? Friends, I am a Christian today not because I think Jesus existed, and neither do I think Jesus died on the cross for my sins and rose the third day. I am a Christian because I have great historical proof that Jesus actually did live, walk on this earth, die on a cross. He went to a grave, but he rose on the third day. Just as John says in chapter 21, verse 24, I am the one who testified to these events, and I have recorded them here, and we know that this account of these things is accurate. We have a reason to believe, and we have a reason to know that this is not some subjective opinion. This is a historical fact, one that God left on record for his people, so we can have a good reason to believe. If you're struggling with your faith, I want you to know that you have a good reason to believe. I will also want you to know that you can believe in the Bible, not only as a divine message, but as historically reliable information that will give you a reason to believe in the Son who walked on this earth, Jesus Christ.